others. At the sight of Lucius at the door, Voldemort rattled off a long list of ingredients. Besides these, we need the fang and heartstring of a Peruvian viper-toothed dragon. Fresh is best. Everything else is ready. Only the dragon fang and heartstring need to be procured, Lucius replied immediately. I'll also prepare the other tools for potion making. Voldemort nodded, then gestured to the house elf to bring his two students forward. Why aren't you fetching them yet? Voldemort asked Lucius, puzzled. I just wanted to ask about my father's condition. Lucius hesitated, as if holding back. This potion is meant to trace the root of Senior Abu's illness. Go quickly, Voldemort said. Lucius's surprise gave way to joy, and he vanished in a flash to carry out the task. Voldemort shook his head, unhurried. This Lucius acted like a child sometimes. Before long, the house elf returned with his two students. Curses are common magic. You must learn to handle them. I have my own unique methods, Voldemort explained, directing his gaze toward Neville. You have a talent for potions. Any skilled herbologist can become a potion master, so study carefully. Neville nodded vaguely, still bewildered at how he had become a herbology prodigy. Voldemort offered no further explanation and began teaching the method for crafting the curse-revealing potion. Soon, all the ingredients arrived, except for the dragon fang and heartstring, which Lucius had gone to fetch. This late at night, he's in such a hurry, Voldemort remarked with a smile. Lord Voldemort, you don't know. Lucius has tried everything for his father's illness. Now that hope appears, how could he not be anxious? From Narcissa's smile, it was clear she shared his relief and happiness. The unity of the Malfoy family was admirable. Fine. When he returns, just bring them here directly, Voldemort said, then resumed instructing his two students in potion making. Narcissa glanced at the children with envy before slowly withdrawing. Later, Lucius returned, carrying the freshly killed dragon fang and heartstring, which made Voldemort roll his eyes. Killed just now? Voldemort asked. Yes, it works better, Lucius replied, unusually cheerful. Not too much time. Tell your father not to sleep. I'll be there soon, Voldemort said, then began brewing the potion. Stir clockwise 3 times. No more, or the effect weakens. No less, or it will be too strong. Slice thin, crush before adding, or the dream's realism diminishes. The African tree snake skin resists clockwise rotation. This notion is archaic. As he instructed his students, Voldemort carefully crafted the potion. Soon it was complete, and he led the two students toward Abu's room. To enter another's dream, you must first master the legilimens of the mind, he instructed. The moment Voldemort finished speaking, he saw surprise flash across Neville's face. Your headmaster is also a master in this field. Magic itself is neither good nor evil. With that instruction, Voldemort quickened his pace toward the senior student's room. So foul! Abel, lying in bed, gave a wry smile and asked. Voldemort nodded. I'll enter your mind shortly, peering into your dreams alongside you, so... Open your mind, I understand, Abel said, nodding. But you know, I've been practicing that for years. Sometimes it shuts itself off naturally, so you might need to push a little harder. Voldemort nodded again, signaling he understood. Before long, Abel drifted into sleep. Voldemort raised his wand, while the others in the room held their breath in tense anticipation. Shh! He waved his wand, sending a spell toward Abel's head. In the foggy darkness, scenes slowly began to take shape. The altar, a massive dragon, blood. Slaying the dragon, extracting its teeth, the teeth piercing through its heart. The curse ritual continued, flames burning amid the carnage. A normal curse, Voldemort observed, unable to discern why it had backfired. His gaze shifted to the slain dragon. Could it really be that the dragon's sheer power had caused the curse to rebound? He pondered, ready to sever the magic. After all, the ritual had ended. Everything was complete. But suddenly, the darkness shifted, and a new vision appeared. A damp, shadowy dungeon, frail humans wailing, and a single wizard. A new curse? Voldemort stared in astonishment. No, if it were new, it shouldn't trace back to the previous scene. He tried to draw closer to that world, but it proved difficult. Whoever you are, I will curse you, at the cost of his life. The wizard in the dungeon roared, raising his wand and revealing a bluish mark on his arm. Voldemort's eyes lit up, murmuring, I see, a counter-curse that demands a human life. That's easy enough to handle. An evil smile spread across his striking face. Curses are like a balance. Place your offering on the left, and inflict harm upon your enemy on the right. It's a fair exchange until the offering is fully observed. Once the left side is seen, the damage on the right becomes far less terrifying. Avoidance or substitution could work. The key point was equivalence. A life for a life. That was the basic law of balance. Lucius busied himself accordingly. He took Voldemort's advice and went to Muggle prisons in search of hardened criminals. Voldemort, meanwhile, began his own quiet routine, teaching his 2 disciples and studying the resurrection potion. It was destined to be a difficult process, for he had many demands for his new body. He was determined not to repeat the mistake Linzuo remembered. He would not create a snake-faced monstrosity. While he focused on his tasks, his enemies were already making their moves. Hogwarts, headmaster's office. Before Dumbledore lay an array of cards: Riddle House, the Wu Orphanage, the Black Forest map, Malfoy Manor. At the very center, above all others, rested a card depicting a dilapidated mansion. Boom! The office door swung open. Dumbledore peered over the rim of his half-moon spectacles. His hand lifted his wand, as if to verify the visitor's identity before deciding whether to put away what lay before him. Soon, the face of Professor McGonagall appeared on the spiral staircase. Dumbledore lowered his wand, evidently deciding it was unnecessary. "Malfoy Manor, headmaster. You guessed right," McGonagall said, settling across from him at the desk, exhaustion clear on her face. "Neville and Luna are with him?" Dumbledore asked. "Yes, and they seem fine, especially Luna. She's like Hermione." McGonagall paused, shaking her head and making a disapproving tsk-tsk. "He has always been skilled at tempting others. We cannot blame the children," Dumbledore said, frowning in thought. "I just don't understand Mrs. Longbottom. Why did she agree? Was it really because of those 2 children?" "Of course. For them, Augusta would do anything," McGonagall affirmed. Dumbledore shook his head, offering no further comment, only a pointed suggestion. "Keep in contact with her, McGonagall. Whatever happens, we were allies once." "I understand, headmaster," she replied, but quickly shifted the topic. "Does Fudge truly not believe you?" "He does, but fear makes him choose disbelief," Dumbledore said with a helpless shrug. "Not everyone chooses courage." "So what do we do? Let him act unchecked?" McGonagall glanced at the cards on the desk. Curiosity piqued. "What are you working on?" "I'm considering what trap Tom might leave for me," Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling slightly as he regarded the cards, "and whether I should follow it up." McGonagall shot him an exasperated look, unwilling to let the enemy dictate their moves. But Dumbledore clearly would not listen, so she merely glanced at him and remained silent. "What if we involve Harry?" Dumbledore suddenly asked. "What?" McGonagall was taken aback. "Harry Potter," Dumbledore said seriously, his expression hardening. "I know he is young, but sometimes destiny is more reliable, so—" "We must honor the Potters, headmaster," McGonagall said gravely. Dumbledore nodded, the very hesitation that had held him back evident. The Potter family had already sacrificed so much in this war, dragging Harry in because of him. "Perhaps we could consult him. What do you think?" Dumbledore asked. McGonagall furrowed her brow, unsure how to respond. But that was not the most important part. The important part was that Dumbledore was seeking her opinion, and not just perfunctorily. "You rarely seek help on critical matters," she said, her words unrelated to the question, leaving Dumbledore momentarily stunned. He paused, then removed his glasses, sighed, and smiled. "Summon Professor Snape for me. I believe this matter requires his counsel." Putting his glasses back on, Dumbledore spoke in a tone that brooked no refusal. McGonagall rose and departed without hesitation. In truth, she preferred this Dumbledore. The former one could be forgotten. "Wish," Dumbledore waved his hand, and the cards flew to the bookshelf, stacking neatly beside a deck of tarot cards. He then leaned back in his chair, his gaze naturally falling upon the fireplace. In a daze, he saw 2 figures deep in conversation. One was hungry for knowledge, the other spoke with complete candor. But now, all that beauty had vanished. Bang! The memory was shattered by the sound of a door opening. Dumbledore forced his eyes open, gathering his strength. "You're looking for me." Snape strode in briskly. He sometimes reminded Dumbledore of Voldemort, perhaps because in his youth he had mimicked the Dark Lord's way of walking. The only difference was that Voldemort, when striding with his head held high, spread his arms, letting his cloak swirl and amplify his presence. Snape, on the other hand, kept his arms folded. Though his presence could not rival Voldemort's, it carried its own distinct flavor. "I have a question for you." Dumbledore turned to Snape, only to find him staring blankly. "What is it?" he asked while touching his face, aware that Snape's gaze was fixed directly on him. "Nothing, really. It's just that you seem much older." Snape's words made Dumbledore pause. He had felt mentally drained lately, though his body remained strong. Yet Snape didn't lie. Had he really aged? "Perhaps it's just fatigue," Dumbledore decided, setting the thought aside. Instead, he asked, "Are you still teaching Harry?" "Of course," Snape replied. "Have you considered adding more practical lessons for him?" Dumbledore continued. Snape frowned, signaling that he didn't understand. "I mean," Dumbledore said, "I happen to be going out to handle some matters. Perhaps it could broaden his experience." "That doesn't seem to require my permission," Snape said, his eyes growing unreadable. "Of course, but I thought maybe. I refuse." Before Dumbledore could finish, Snape interrupted. "If I have the right to decide." Dumbledore's expression darkened slightly. This was clearly not the answer he wanted. When he tried to change Snape's mind with just a look, the result remained the same. "I refuse." Communication with Snape had been unpleasant, leaving Dumbledore hesitant. Was this man still necessary at Hogwarts? But he quickly pushed the thought aside. He had to complete his current task first. "Severus, I need his help." Dumbledore gestured for Snape to sit, but he remained standing. "You've heard the prophecy. It came true, didn't it?" Snape stared at Dumbledore for a long moment before speaking. "If you've already decided, there's no need to ask me." Without waiting for a reply, he turned and walked toward the door. "Severus." Dumbledore rose to call after him. "Are you certain you want to leave like this?" Snape paused, hesitation flickering across his face, but he soon strode away decisively. Dumbledore sat back down, rubbing his temples. He felt the weight of age pressing on him. In the past, he would have written the letter to dismiss Snape without a second thought, but now he lacked the energy to do so. After a moment of solitude, he picked up his wand and sent forth his Patronus. A little while later, Harry was brought in by Professor McGonagall. "Have your wand, Harry?" Dumbledore asked directly. "Yes, Headmaster," Harry replied with a nod. Dumbledore studied him for a moment, his gaze sharpening. "You've learned occlumency?" "Yes, Professor Snape insisted I learn it," Harry answered. Dumbledore frowned, but made no further comment. "Come with me, Harry." Obediently, Harry nodded, asking no questions. "Take my arm," Dumbledore said. Harry grasped it, and Dumbledore signaled. Fawkes the Phoenix flew to them. Boom! A flash of fire erupted, and the two vanished from the headmaster's office. Hum! A bright point of light rose from Dumbledore's wand, illuminating the surroundings. "You know your mother left magic within you, don't you?" Dumbledore asked as they walked. "Yes," Harry replied, nodding, wand at the ready, eyes scanning the thick nettles around them. The place felt desolate, and he didn't understand why Dumbledore had brought him here. "Do you know why he didn't die?" Dumbledore continued. "After the killing curse rebounded, he lived. It's almost impossible." "I don't know, Headmaster." In the distance, Harry spotted a dilapidated wooden hut, its beams exposed through broken roof tiles. "Because of Horcruxes, Harry." Dumbledore waved his wand, and the light above their heads moved closer to the hut. "It's a form of dark magic that splits the soul. Half is hidden in a special vessel, while the other half roams the wizarding world." "That sounds evil, Headmaster." Harry shivered, unsure why he felt the chill. "More evil still, it requires killing a person to create, Harry." Dumbledore signaled Harry to stay cautious, then carefully approached the hut. "Is that a snake?" Harry asked suddenly, pointing at the hut's door. "Yes, a dead snake," Dumbledore whispered. "Wait here. I'll go in first." Harry nodded, staying in place. Dumbledore glanced back at him. Harry looked remarkably calm, clearly Snape's influence. Turning back to the hut, Dumbledore advanced slowly, wand sweeping in measured arcs. Harry watched as Dumbledore drew a light barrier with his wand, repeatedly passing it through the ruined structure. After several passes, Dumbledore's light neared a small window of the hut. "Harry, I'm here, Headmaster." "Be very careful. If magic comes towards you, be ready to defend yourself." "I understand, Headmaster," Harry said, casting a protective iron armor charm in front of him. Dumbledore watched closely, ensuring Harry executed it properly. Then, through the narrow window, he cast a spell into the hut. Crash! It sounded like breaking glass, though Harry knew it was no ordinary shattering. The noise was immense, audible even from a distance. "Stay sharp, Harry," Dumbledore shouted again. Before Harry could reply, the dark hut suddenly erupted with flashes of colored light. Dumbledore, standing close to the room, had already raised a spell identical to Voldemort's. Magic began to fly chaotically from the room, striking the barrier Dumbledore had conjured before him. Harry watched from a distance, certain that Dumbledore was completely at ease. The headmaster even had the leisure to glance at him and wave, signaling for him to step back a little. Obediently, Harry did so. Snape had taught him much, with caution and carefulness emphasized above all. "You have countless chances to turn things around, Harry, but only if no one dies." That warning still echoed in his mind, so Harry refused to act recklessly. After a while, the fireworks-like spells in the room finally vanished. Harry saw Dumbledore step inside, and after a brief moment, he leaned out again. "Come in, Harry, quickly, come in," Dumbledore called. Harry immediately ran forward, wand held close to his chest, right arm pressed against his side, ever vigilant, always ready for defense. A smile finally appeared on Dumbledore's face. "Next year I will arrange for another professor to come, Harry. He will guide you as Snape has." Harry paused, then asked, "Is Professor Snape leaving?" Dumbledore hesitated briefly before replying, "No, not yet, and this new professor will specialize in defense against the dark arts." Harry nodded, though his brow furrowed slightly. Dumbledore said no more. Raising his glowing wand, he returned to the room. Harry followed, eyes scanning the surroundings, though nothing particularly caught his attention. "Where are we, Headmaster?" Harry asked. "The Gaunt House, Harry. Tom's maternal grandfather's home," Dumbledore explained, tilting his head upward as if he had noticed something on the ceiling. Following his gaze, Harry saw a small reflective object affixed to the ceiling. "What's that, Headmaster?" he asked. "A ring, Harry," Dumbledore said. "Likely Marvolo Gaunt's. He treasured it, but I need to retrieve it to be sure." Harry nodded and glanced once more at the gleaming ring. "I'll need your help, Harry." "What should I do?" Harry asked. "Cast a Lumos, Harry. I want to use magic to safely remove that ring." Harry complied, flicking his wand until it glowed brightly. "Stay cautious, Harry, all right?" Dumbledore asked before moving. "I'm ready, Headmaster," Harry said confidently. Dumbledore nodded, pointing his wand toward the ceiling. Chapter 102. Two Worlds Creak, creak. The dim yellow glow of the street lamp spilled into the park, lighting up the twin swings. On them sat two figures, one tall, one small, swaying gently side by side. "Professor, I've been looking up a lot about that man, because of Snape." After a long silence, little Hermione finally spoke. "He wasn't pure blood, was he?" "No, but he carried the honor of pure blood," Voldemort answered firmly. "And all he did, was that to protect the interests of pure bloods?" Hermione frowned as she asked. Voldemort froze for a moment, then shook his head helplessly. "Then why?" Hermione pressed. "There are always those who cannot accept being ordinary, who hunger for power." Half of Voldemort's face lay hidden in shadow, the other half bathed in lamplight. Hermione turned toward him, and in that illuminated half-smile she glimpsed a trace of resignation. "Professor, are you regretting?" she whispered. Voldemort turned his gaze to her. Their eyes locked for a long time before they looked away. "He was like us, Hermione. That was a great opportunity for us." Voldemort turned his wand, and the swings began to sway faster. "Us," Hermione tilted her head. "You mean Muggle-born wizards?" He gave a slight nod, but said nothing more. "In your eyes, he failed, didn't he, Professor?" Hermione asked. "Yes. Why? Obsession, arrogance, no respect for life, no understanding of how society works. Many reasons, but at the heart of it, too much selfishness. But the wizarding world is doing fine now. Even if bad things happen at school, overall, it's still good." Hermione turned to him again. Though the light was behind her, her eyes still carried brightness. "That's because of Dumbledore," Voldemort said with a faint smile. "If someone can bring darkness, then someone else can bring light. But that light is already over 100 years old. We cannot expect an old man to carry everything forever." "Then you, Professor, will you take his place and shine that light?" Hermione asked with hopeful eyes. Voldemort was caught off guard. Then he gave a bitter smile, shook his head, and reached out to ruffle her messy hair. "For certain reasons, I no longer have that chance." "I don't understand." Hermione slapped his hand away with a pout. You will, once you've grown. That answer only deepened her displeasure. She turned her face away and refused to speak. Silence returned to the park. The swings rocked in the quiet night until at last Hermione broke the stillness. Professor, can you tell me more about purebloods? What do they stand for? They are the core of the wizarding world, Voldemort said without hesitation. Most of the truly powerful figures you've heard of were born from pureblood or long-standing wizarding families. And their honor, she asked again. That's complicated, Hermione. In truth, it's little more than a story people tell themselves. His lips curled faintly. He could feel no glory in pure blood, especially when he remembered Death Eaters groveling before him. After all, he himself was half-blood. Then what meaning does it have? Hermione furrowed her brows. A banner, or perhaps a dream, he murmured. When you want to change the world, not just yourself, you need allies. And in such moments, a simple, stirring name is a powerful rallying cry. So that man chose pure bloods because they were the majority? It's tied to his lineage. From what I've learned, he bore some blood of Salazar Slytherin, the founder who left Hogwarts. Hermione's mouth formed a round O of surprise, her eyes wide on him. That doesn't mean much, Hermione. Look at the family trees of the British royals. Many of their kin have turned into ordinary folk. Her astonishment faded, though she still found it wondrous. She was only 11 after all. Old enough to reason, but still young enough to believe in tales of princes and princesses. Intelligence and experience were not the same. The Weasleys are pure blood, right? Completely pure. Yes. As far as I know, they haven't intermarried with Muggles yet, though perhaps in time they might. And Harry's family, they were pure blood too, but they married a Muggle-born, didn't they? Yes, change is inevitable, and the wizarding world is becoming more open. Then why are the Weasleys poor, while Harry is rich, and the Malfoys too? Aren't purebloods supposed to be wealthy? Not necessarily, Hermione. Building and keeping wealth is hard. Every family struggles for it, especially those of long lineage. Then why are the Weasleys poor? Their ancestors left little behind. The current generation has many children, and they spend beyond their means. Many reasons. In short, their state is one they brought upon themselves. They opposed that man, didn't they? The Weasleys have always been Gryffindors, and they dislike Slytherins. Those who gain nothing will always oppose those who already hold power. But of course, the truth is far more complicated than that. Complicated? In what way? Human ties, clashing temperaments, far too tangled. Hermione, that man's arrival was nothing more than a struggle for power, yet at the same time he stirred a revolution in the wizarding world. The problem is he was blind and without purpose. What kind of purpose do you think he should have had? Hermione asked, gazing curiously at Voldemort. I've never settled on that, Hermione. I'm not him. Voldemort gave a bitter smile. But you must have thought about it, Professor. Tell me, what sort of purpose do you think would be right? She pressed. Voldemort furrowed his brow, thinking deeply for a long while before answering. It should have been to open the wizarding world, to make it more inclusive. Magic needs to evolve, just as the Muggle world does. What about the Muggle world? Hermione asked. She was only 11, far too young to grasp the upheavals of the last century, or to see how technology promised a future full of possibilities. The Muggle world is racing ahead, Hermione. I have a Muggle friend who purchased a patent just a couple of years ago, something called the World Wide Web. He said it could change everything. The World Wide Web? I've never heard of it. Hermione shook her head, utterly lost. Computers, you know what those are, don't you? Voldemort asked, his interest suddenly piqued as he turned toward her. Yes. The web links those computers together. Think of it like telephones, but easier, able to carry far more information. Through a computer, you could see events happening thousands of miles away. Not like a television. This allows anyone to share information. Is that even possible? Hermione asked doubtfully. Of course, and soon enough computers will leap forward again. Muggles will use them for everything, even to build machines that think and act like the robots in their science fiction films. Hermione was wide-eyed. The world Voldemort described was something beyond her imagination. Ah, the wizarding world. Voldemort suddenly turned away, sighing, his excitement gone. Hermione, still glowing with wonder at his vision, froze at the sound of his lament. But as she thought of the contrast between the two worlds, she too let out a little sigh, imitating an adult. Night had deepened. The street lamps burned dim, casting both Voldemort's and Hermione's faces into shadow. They sat in silence, neither speaking. Only the old swings creaked squeak squeak, as if voicing the age and decay of the wizarding world. The next chapter, 103, Punishment of Detention. There's no sting without comparison. Last night's idle talk left Voldemort unsettled. The future Linzuo had glimpsed was one he himself could hardly fathom, one even more painful to face than the knowledge that Harry would one day kill him. The muggles he scorned had forged a future that left the wizarding world in the dust. Everything depends on effort. One step at a time, we'll see where it leads. Voldemort muttered this to himself before burying his focus once more into the Book of Hypotheses. But before that, he had drawn up the possible paths of magic. First, to grant thought to magic. Second, to grant emotion to magic. Third, the composite sine wave of the repair charm. Fourth, sculpting skill as a way to enhance transfiguration. Fifth, the changes wrought by an artist's heart, akin to the first two. These he had gleaned from Dumbledore and from Muggle studies. He immediately dismissed the fourth and fifth. The former Voldemort had a gift for transfiguration. This self did not. A path requiring innate talent or endless years of mastering sculpting wasn't worth his time. Better to merge soul fragments and steal talent directly than waste a lifetime on chiseling stone. As for giving magic thought or emotion, he would not choose that for now either. With his soul incomplete, either choice risked regret later. That left only the composite sine wave of the repair charm. A road no wizard had ever walked, daunting and uncertain, but the best option before him. Without hesitation, he plunged back into pages of the Hypotheses. Time slipped by. Voldemort soon devoured the entire book, setting his steps upon the search for this composite sine wave. It consumed an entire afternoon of fruitless frustration until he was forced to wander to the lake just to ease his mind. Magic was, after all, invisible. How was he to even begin? So he ventured into the Muggle world, gathering texts on sine waves and harmonics. They left him only more dizzy, more aimless. Finally, he sought counsel from Professor Flitwick, master of charms. But the small man could not grasp the idea at all. His wide eyes bulged like a house elf's, making Voldemort briefly wonder whether his lineage hid elf blood. Using wizardry to solve a problem like that? Quirrell, your brain must be broken, Flitwick snapped after staring in stunned silence for far too long. Headmaster Dumbledore often applies Muggle reasoning, Voldemort countered, unwilling to retreat without invoking that great name. Why shouldn't we draw from all sources, instead of clinging to the narrow ways of the wizarding world? Then go ask the headmaster yourself. Damn it, you've twisted me into knots. For once, Flitwick actually lost his temper. Voldemort fell silent. If I could go to him, do you think I wouldn't have already? Very well, Professor, he said at last, changing tactics. Let me put it differently. What I seek is the rhythm and frequency hidden between incantation and wand movement. Nuanced, precise. At that, Flitwick calmed somewhat, though still displeased. But as Voldemort was his brightest pupil, he grudgingly offered guidance. Through raw magical perception, sensed the subtle shifts directly. But only an extraordinarily powerful wizard could achieve this. Who could do it? Voldemort asked. The headmaster, Flitwick replied without hesitation. Voldemort etched the answer in his mind but had no intention of going. Fear was part of it, but more, he would not risk letting Dumbledore glimpse this path. If the theory proved correct, Dumbledore wielding it would be terrifying beyond measure. Unless desperate, Voldemort would never allow that. Observation, then. Try varied casting methods, like your experiments with incantations in different tongues, or have different people cast the charm and study the results. Voldemort's eyes gleamed. That was useful. Anything else? He pressed on, determined to squeeze the last drop of wisdom from Flitwick. Experience it. Though with the repair charm, that's troublesome. Flitwick shrugged. Do all short men harbor a streak of masochism? Voldemort mused. Still, he admitted, it was a path, and with the secret of time, he could test it. After taking his leave, Voldemort picked up again both the cumbersome repair charm and the secret of time. The charm he already understood, Now it was a matter of repetition, studying the tonal states of its syllables. The latter brought agony, but pain bore fruit. He would endure it willingly. Soon the holidays ended. Students streamed back into the castle. At that time, Voldemort revived an earlier punishment he had left unfinished. 10 students were summoned to his office on the very first night. The Weasley twins, having caused trouble again, had even volunteered for Quirrell's detention. McGonagall had agreed. Voldemort, of course, saw through their ploy. But the Marauder's map never left his side, so 2 more test subjects only pleased him. Thus, while 8 students happily practiced charms, the twins suffered, forced again and again to perform the repair charm for his observation. George, focus, the parchment isn't fully restored. I'm Fred, Professor. Shut it, George. Say that again and I'll have you scrubbing toilets. Fred, push more magic into it. I need a clearer look. I can't push any harder, Professor. You've already drained me dry. In that case, go scrub the toilets. No, Professor. On second thought, I think I can manage a bit more. With the twins around, detention was no longer dull. Even a few first years who happened to witness Voldemort drilling the Weasley brothers in between their lessons found it entertaining. Word of these unusual detentions spread quickly. Percy soon gathered a few teaching assistants to help, which, much to Voldemort's delight, made the work even more fruitful. But Professor McGonagall, ever fair and proper, was displeased. She sought him out and said, "Quirrell, detention is not tutoring. You must treat it more seriously." "For the sake of magical research, Professor McGonagall, one doesn't interfere with the other," Voldemort explained calmly. McGonagall had no real counter, and in the end could only let it be. With more subjects to observe, Voldemort finally managed, through repeated comparisons and calculations, to sketch a rough theory about the compound sine waves involved in the repairing charm. Yet the finer details still eluded him. Dumbledore loomed like an unavoidable barrier. "Even if I don't want to aid the enemy, whichever way I turn, it feels like mutual ruin," Voldemort muttered in his office, tangled in a web of inescapable dilemmas. Chapter 104, Dumbledore's Intervention. Dumbledore's days suddenly grew quieter, to the point of leaving him restless with a sense of emptiness. He had been watching Snape in secret for some time, only to find that the boy who had once strayed into darkness had done nothing troublesome this time. The discovery left him both puzzled and oddly relieved. The Malfoy affair was finally settled. Though he had failed to drive Lucius off the board, wringing a hefty sum from the Malfoy vaults left him thoroughly satisfied. But the flurry of work had forced him to delegate many responsibilities to McGonagall, and since she handled them well, he felt no urge to take them back. Thus, with leisure on his hands and boredom creeping in, his curious gaze shifted toward Quirrell. "Quirrell, I hear you've struck upon a novel idea," Dumbledore remarked casually one morning as he passed Voldemort's table at breakfast. "Flick mentioned it to me. I would be glad to take part, Quirrell. Even at my age, I can still contribute to magical research." "Thank you, Headmaster, but it is far too complicated. I tried explaining it to Professor Flitwick. He couldn't understand a word. I mustn't trouble you with such things, especially when you already bear the burdens of a headmaster." Voldemort declined smoothly. Behind his crescent moon spectacles, Dumbledore's eyes blinked. He wanted to protest that he was not so busy, but with professors and students all around him. Yes, the weight of work indeed presses heavily on my shoulders," he sighed instead. "I only wished to ask if you required my help. If not, then carry on, Quirrell. I believe in you." He walked away disheartened, suddenly finding the sausages on his plate tasteless. But he did not give up. After consulting Flitwick, he slipped into a Muggle school, and the very next day, "Marvelous books, Quirrell. Look, sine curves, I found the answer." He flourished a textbook at Voldemort with pride. "No, Headmaster, I'm working with physics. What you have there is mathematics, 2 entirely different paths." Dumbledore froze. He looked down at the cover. Sure enough, the word mathematics stared back at him. "I mustn't waste your time, Headmaster," Voldemort said, voice tinged with longing yet painted with pain. "I've troubled you enough already." "Don't say that, Quirrell. If I could. Headmaster, you need rest. If you truly have leisure, then a nap would serve you better. Do not wear yourself out for our sake. We professors can carry out our own tasks." He turned to his colleagues. "Am I right? Shouldn't we avoid burdening the headmaster? The professors nodded eagerly. Headmaster, please take care of yourself. The school needs you. Don't overwork. Leave the students to us. It's our duty. Dumbledore was moved. Eyes brimming with tears, he thanked each of them before returning to his seat in despair. Back then, Nicholas Flamel invited me to study alchemy at his side, and now? Has the age shifted so much? Am I no longer wanted? No one could answer his doubt. He was, after all, the foremost wizard of his era, and Albus Dumbledore was not one to seek help from others. Thus, for a long stretch afterward, he vanished from sight once again. The headmaster must be grappling with some great trouble, the professors murmured among themselves. Half a month later, Dumbledore emerged. He looked a little disheveled, but his spirit shone bright. Seeberg's two-dimensional string theory is fascinating. I spoke with him about it personally, he said offhandedly as he passed Voldemort's table once more. He has many bold conjectures, but now he wishes to return to something called the Matrix model. It seems he no longer wishes to continue down that path. Voldemort's eye twitched as he stared at the old bee in disbelief. I've only been wrestling with sine waves, and you've already leapt ahead to string theory? String theory, a labyrinthine field. Thanks to his past life's memory, Voldemort knew a little of it. But even at the time he had crossed over, the theory was not fully formed. It was vast, profound, a plunge into the very fabric of reality. He had only skimmed descriptions of its dimensions, never anything deeper. Even the Book of Hypotheses, when speaking of composite sine waves in the repair charm, had only brushed against string theory. Its authors had no mastery of it, merely speculating it might be one possible direction. Yet Dumbledore, from a single sine wave, had somehow stumbled into string theory. Voldemort had never imagined such a leap. Two-dimensional string theory. Forgive me, headmaster. I've studied a little, but I can't claim to understand it. Voldemort massaged his temple, realizing that preventing Dumbledore from diving into the subject was already impossible. I don't understand it either. That's why I sought out Seeberg, Dumbledore said cheerfully, clearly fishing to rope Voldemort in. And did you? Voldemort asked, giving up on resistance. If he could not refuse, then best to drag the old bee down with him. No, I lack too much of the foundation in physics, and as I hear, the theory itself remains unsteady. Without ceremony, Dumbledore circled the long table, shooed Flitwick aside, and sat directly beside Voldemort. To import string theory into magic, I fear it is too unrealistic. The framework is not mature enough. The composite sine wave is complex, yes, but what we borrow from it is only a fraction of the whole. Voldemort said carefully. Exactly so. Dumbledore nodded vigorously. Just as sculpting can strengthen transfiguration, but at its core, the emotional resonance of a wizard and the vision of an artist remain worlds apart. That is why I wish only to take the concept of composite sine waves, Voldemort admitted at last, to chart the peaks and troughs of magic as it unfolds, then through observation, construct more intricate frequencies and richer waveforms. That would require magic to manifest itself far more clearly. At present, I am the one best suited to reveal such details, but I cannot both perform and observe. Unlike you, I lack the ability to suspend spells mid-air. Dumbledore answered at once. We still need to probe deeper into magic. The revealing charm is too vague. I think a specialized spell needs to be invented. I've already started researching one. Leave that to me. I remember crafting something similar before, though I've forgotten the details after so many years unused. What would really help is a device like a heart rate monitor, or its magical equivalent. I've seen magical tools along those lines, but their sensitivity isn't nearly enough. We'll need powerful materials attuned to magical resonance, and a range detector for magical fields, plus a way to distinguish feedback from different types of magic. The more they discussed, the more engrossed they became. Eventually, they shoved the food aside, pulled out parchment, and began writing down lists of requirements one after another. At first, the other professors could still follow the conversation, but soon their words became so technical that no one else could understand what they were trying to accomplish. The students, however, were stunned at the sight. Who could have imagined their professor, locked in such fervent exchange with none other than Dumbledore, famed for his vast knowledge? Hermione's eyes sparkled like tiny stars as she watched Quirrell. Was it admiration? Pure, unshaken admiration? Her feelings were too tangled for her young mind to sort out. Chapter 1-5. The Two Who Forgot Themselves. Hermione's detention now included the company of a man well over 100 years old. Faster, Hermione. You can do it. The old wizard spoke gently, holding out a pocket watch-like magical device. It looked a bit rough, clearly rushed in its crafting, but its needle was so fine it seemed spun from silk. At his side, Voldemort stood with a notebook in hand, recording each twitch of the needle with painstaking care. Hermione was nervous, but excitement burned beneath it. Steeling herself, she raised her wand and incanted at greater speed, reparo as new. The needle on the watch quivered violently, and Voldemort immediately began scribbling, his quill flying without pause. Your notes must be fast enough, Percy, and precise. Voldemort ordered, glancing toward the boy assisting. The experiment needed more hands. 2 researchers alone weren't enough. Percy had been drawn into the work, and so far, he was proving capable. It seemed likely he would become their chosen aide. Excellent, Hermione. The spell work is nearly flawless, Dumbledore said, lifting his eyes from the instrument to smile at her. If you can cast it even faster, child, I'll grant you one wish. Hermione's cheeks flushed with excitement. The other children, watching from the sidelines, could only sigh in envy, for none of them could match her speed in spellcasting. As for the older twins and the prefects, Voldemort and Dumbledore had no need of them. What they sought was data from those of thinner magical reserves. Those with abundant power could be tested upon by the 2 of them directly, without assistance. Reparo. Hermione cast the charm, then instantly lowered her wand. Sorry, Headmaster, it's still not fast enough. Let me prepare again. Dumbledore gave a small nod, then turned his eyes toward Voldemort, and silently asking if this much sufficed. The closer to the limit, the more valuable the data, Voldemort answered. Dumbledore inclined his head once more and waited patiently for Hermione's next attempt. Ready now, Headmaster. Hermione drew a deep breath, glanced once toward Voldemort, then swept her wand, reparo. At once Dumbledore pressed his pocket watch, while Voldemort's eyes widened, tracking the trembling of its hands. Faster than last time, but only slightly. Hard to say if we've reached the limit yet, Voldemort muttered as he scribbled notes. Headmaster, may I state my wish? Hermione blurted out, heedless of his words, her gaze fixed on Dumbledore. Speak, child. I want to join your research team. Her declaration stunned them all. Even Voldemort froze, lifting his head in surprise. A first year. What use could she possibly be here? Sensing his doubt, Hermione squared her shoulders. I can record data too. When you explained it to Senior Percy earlier, I already understood the method. Voldemort glanced at his notebook, then at Percy, but said nothing. And besides, 2 recorders can verify accuracy. If one errors, the other can correct it. Hermione pressed her case with determined logic. The first point matters little, but her second. Dumbledore looked to Voldemort. I believe she's right. Voldemort shrugged, leaving the decision to the old bee. Given your exceptional marks, very well, but your studies must not suffer, Dumbledore conceded at last. Hermione nodded, beaming with joy, while the other students looked visibly disappointed. That will be all for today. We'll meet again tomorrow evening, Dumbledore said with a wave of his hand. Wait, Voldemort stopped them. Curfew has come. If anyone wishes to withdraw. None left, though the question was pointless. Still, duty compelled him to ask. He was their professor, after all. Have we reached the lowest frequency yet? Dumbledore asked. Barring newly enrolled children or those with the raw spark who've yet to set foot in Hogwarts, I'd say we're at the floor, Voldemort replied. We can't very well test infants, so be it. Dumbledore stretched, then smiled. A drink? Voldemort gave a rare nod. He was weary, and a cup to ease the strain sounded welcome. Hagrid's hut, then. He always brings cheer. The last time I drank there, 3 years ago. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Voldemort had no reason to refuse. He got along well enough with Hagrid. Together they strode out of the castle toward the gamekeeper's hut beside the Forbidden Forest. Students greeted them along the way without surprise. They were already accustomed to seeing the headmaster and Professor Quirrell walking side by side, whispering of deep magical research. At their sudden arrival, Hagrid was both startled and delighted. Headmaster, 3 years since ye last came drinking at me place. He poured for them eagerly, then turned to Quirrell with a grin. "And you, Quirrell. Not since the night you drank yourself under the table." "Busy days," Voldemort shrugged, noting how the headmaster only smiled and said nothing. "I've heard the talk, your research with the headmaster. Quirrell, you're a genius, always knew it." Hagrid's booming laugh shook the hut as he clapped Voldemort's back hard enough to rattle his soul. "It's the headmaster who leads. I merely follow," Voldemort deflected, unwilling to claim credit. "It was you who opened the way, and in truth, my contributions haven't outweighed yours. Do not be too modest, Quirrell," Dumbledore said, raising his cup. Voldemort smiled faintly and said nothing, lifting his glass to meet Dumbledore's, then clinking against Hagrid's vast tankard, large as a fishbowl. "To good company," Hagrid cheered. The three drank. Voldemort swiftly drained his cup, Hagrid and Dumbledore likewise, though the headmaster's vessel was no bigger than a child's fist. "Hagrid," Voldemort asked once the glass was down, "have you ever triggered a magical burst? A spell suddenly erupting with far greater force than intended? The phenomenon, rare, yet every wizard encountered it at least a few times in life. Never once. Only weakening. Hagrid poured again, unconcerned. For him, wizardry was but one weapon. Being half giant, his fists sufficed for most foes. Then perhaps different bloodlines manifest differently on the composite sine wave, Voldemort murmured, eyes alight. "Worth testing," Dumbledore agreed at once. Both turned their gaze upon Hagrid, who shifted uneasily. "What are ye planning?" "The repair charm. You can cast it, can't you?" Voldemort asked, rising with notebook in hand. "Of course he can. I taught him," Dumbledore said, already drawing forth his watch. "Cast it, my boy. You'll do just fine. But, weren't we drinking?" Hagrid asked in confusion. "No, that doesn't matter. Research time has arrived, Hagrid. Please cooperate with us." Voldemort raised the notebook in his hand, speaking with solemn authority. Dumbledore nodded from the side, lifting his pocket watch device. "Begin, Hagrid. Don't waste time." And just like that, a perfectly good drinking session came to an abrupt end. Chapter 106, A Small Step for Two, Professor Quirrell was cursed. At least, that's what people were saying. Something about him was clearly off. It had become the most gossiped about subject of late, made worse by the fact that the headmaster's temper had soured as well. Every morning, noon, and night, the headmaster and Professor Quirrell dined in the Great Hall. They claimed it was for student vitality, a way to glimpse the future of magic through the children. To hell with the future. That was what the students thought. Who could eat in peace when, out of nowhere, the headmaster or professor might summon you to the staff table and demand a magical demonstration? The pressure was suffocating. And when those two hovered over you, muttering endlessly, sometimes even snapping at you, the pressure hardened into trauma. As a result, many students stopped eating in the hall altogether. Instead, they sent one roommate at a time to fetch meals, just to avoid the humiliation of being singled out. But even that strategy proved useless. "Go fetch Cho Chang, Robert. Skipping breakfast isn't healthy," Voldemort remarked casually to the Ravenclaw prefect who happened to pass by, while continuing his discussion with Dumbledore. From a short distance away, Flitwick subtly tried to wave his prefect off, but Robert's eyes betrayed him, and Dumbledore's sharp glare followed at once. "Go on, Robert. The headmaster and your professor need her." Flitwick immediately changed his tone. Robert nodded and left. Before long, he returned with Cho Chang trailing timidly behind him, trembling with unease. "Is this for the Asian test, Professor?" Hermione asked, half a sausage in one hand and her notebook in the other, rushing over with Percy just a step behind. "Yes. We need to confirm the relationship between the weakest fluctuations and the highest success rate," Voldemort said seriously before turning to Cho with a gentle smile. "Have you eaten well, child?" "Why, yes, Professor, I have," Cho replied softly. "Percy, Hermione," Dumbledore whispered to the two nearby, "pay close attention to the low-frequency sine waves. Quirrell and I suspect the secret lies hidden there." Both nodded at once, eyes shining with focus as they turned their gaze toward Cho. "Now then," Voldemort said, "put on the equipment." Voldemort came to her side, producing a pair of shackles and fastening them around Cho Chang's wrists. He then linked the metal chains to a newly crafted device, something like a clock, but with far too many hands. "Professor, is the physique of the Eastern races truly so unusual?" Cho asked timidly, watching Voldemort at work. Voldemort shot a glare at the headmaster. If you hadn't lashed out at students before, they wouldn't be this frightened of us. Dumbledore glared right back, and you were no better. Neither had room to scold the other. Yes, Voldemort replied while adjusting the dials. Easterners show the highest success rate with spell work, yet their magical fluctuations are low. Among Africans, the rate is lowest, but their waveforms are most volatile. Europeans sit somewhere in balance between the two. Cho nodded, calming somewhat. She noticed both headmaster and professor were in good spirits today. When they weren't sharp-tempered or scolding, students found it easier to cooperate. Hermione, you'll take the low frequencies. Percy, the high, Voldemort instructed. Weren't we meant to focus solely on the low? Dumbledore frowned. That was what we agreed last night. I'll handle the low frequencies as well, headmaster. You should oversee the instrument yourself, Voldemort said smoothly. Dumbledore shrugged, swallowing his irritation. The work had grown difficult of late, and both their tempers had been frayed. Still, each had realized it in recent days and made efforts to restrain themselves. Soon, Cho began casting the mending charm. At once they recorded her results, then compared their notes. As I thought, Voldemort said at once, eyes bright. There's a distinct rhythm to the tremors in low-frequency three-dimensional waves. No longer content with simple sine curves on a plane, they had expanded their study into 3 dimensions. The wave now had not only length and breadth, but height as well. If this theory holds, Dumbledore mused, tugging at his beard, then the broader amplitudes among Africans may well explain their greater volatility. Summon Blaise Zabini. Testing his waveforms will confirm it, Voldemort said, already turning to call Malfoy, who stood not far off. Blaise was a newly enrolled Slytherin. Professor, morning classes are about to begin, Hermione reminded softly. Let Hagrid take them. First-year lessons are simple enough, practical drills only, Dumbledore said, glancing at Voldemort. Very well. Hermione, tell him for me, then attend your own class. Percy will stay. Professor, Hermione cut in, I want to help too. I can catch up on notes later. Voldemort arched a brow at Dumbledore. Let her stay, the headmaster said. She'll learn more here than in any classroom. Voldemort only shrugged. He sent a student to pass Hagrid the message, then ordered Malfoy to fetch Blaise Zabini. Tell him to meet us in the Eastern Tower. So saying, he departed the hall with Dumbledore and the rest. The moment the pair of troublemakers left, the great hall erupted in cheers. At this rate, the headmaster and professor might soon surpass Snape as the most disliked men in the castle. But neither cared. The deeper their research went, the more certain they were of the path they trod. Perhaps soon, their discoveries would shake the whole of the wizarding world. Blaise Zabini, a dark-skinned boy with high cheekbones and narrow, slightly upturned eyes, harbored clear prejudice against Muggleborns. Once, when Hermione had tried to fit the instrument onto him, he'd sneered, "Don't touch me, mudblood." Both Voldemort and Dumbledore had been momentarily stunned. Then Dumbledore's furious roar had shaken the whole hall. Voldemort had been calmer, though he noticed Hermione quickly swipe away a tear. The strong girl did not break down. She shed only that one. Percy, fasten the instrument to him, Voldemort commanded now as Blaise entered the tower. Percy obeyed with a hard glare. He'd punished Blaise more than once already. By now, Percy was undisputedly the prince among Hogwarts children. Voldemort and Dumbledore, however, said nothing further. Their focus lay wholly on the work. A month had passed, and results were finally at hand. Before long, they obtained the data they sought, just as they had hypothesized. Next, we tested on me, Dumbledore said, almost trembling with eagerness. I have every confidence in you, Albus, Voldemort said firmly. Their bond had grown closer. Dumbledore now insisted he call him so. As I've told you, Quirinus, only with closeness can we forget titles. To clash and quarrel for the sake of magic, that is a vital part of research. Voldemort welcomed it. It eased the shadow of fear that still lingered toward the old bee. After all, for the sake of the future, he couldn't remain afraid of him forever. Reparo as new. The elder wand flicked forward. A streak of yellow and violet light struck the scrap of parchment, mending it in the blink of an eye. The crest of the wave is clear enough, Professor, but the troughs jump too quickly. I can hardly record them. Percy scratched at his head in frustration. Voldemort glanced at Hermione. The little witch pouted and nodded. Her readings were the same. "It's no good at all, Headmaster," Voldemort said with resignation. "The spell is too powerful. The reparo completes instantly, leaving no time for the instruments to catch anything more." Dumbledore nodded, equally troubled. "We'll need a larger testing ground, Professor." "A sheet of parchment or a table won't cut it," Percy suggested. "And the instruments, too. They need to be scaled up," Hermione added quickly. Voldemort turned toward Dumbledore, knowing only the man before him had the authority to provide such a space. He was, after all, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Dumbledore moved to the tower window, gazing out. Not far away, a group of children were playing Quidditch. The sight drew his eyes. "What about the Quidditch pitch?" Dumbledore asked. "It's vast, spacious, and safe." "An excellent choice, Albus," Voldemort agreed. "But will Madame Hooch allow it?" That was the rub, destroying her pitch only to repair it again. "It won't be a problem." So said Dumbledore, before striding off to negotiate with Madame Hooch. The result was favorable, though the process was less than pleasant. Madame Hooch, with her short hair and sharp temper, berated him thoroughly. According to her, forcing students into research and humiliating them in the Great Hall was already outrageous. "Now you mean to damage school property? No headmaster in history has ever stooped so low." In short, Dumbledore returned with a stormy face, but with her reluctant approval. As for the injustice he endured, no one in the research group paid it much mind. Such things were the price of scholarship. "Very well. Next, we'll need a few professors to destroy the Quidditch pitch. How about Snape? He's been rather invisible lately." Dumbledore composed himself again. Voldemort shrugged. It hardly mattered who they chose. His mind was wholly consumed by the research. He'd nearly forgotten Snape existed. "Let the students come and watch," Percy suggested suddenly. "It'll be a lesson. No one's ever seen something so large repaired before." "We should take a picture, too. If the research succeeds, it'll be a historic keepsake," Hermione chimed in. The two of them were little more than assistants, so they had the leisure to think about such things. Dumbledore and Voldemort had no such mood, but neither objected. It would indeed mark a milestone. "This Saturday, then. We mustn't disrupt too many classes." Old Dumbledore cast a meaningful look at Voldemort, finally remembering his duties as headmaster. It was only at his request that Voldemort had granted leave in the first place. So the time was set, preparations made. On Saturday morning, they all gathered at the Quidditch pitch. Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick, Professor Snape. One by one, the professors entered the field, raised their wands, and unleashed spell after spell, tearing the Quidditch stands apart. From a distance, students watched eagerly, calling out the names of the magic being used. The twins jeered and joked while Lee Jordan acted as though narrating a match. "A beautiful Fractura Totalis. Professor Flitwick has blasted apart the east side stands. A flawless transfiguration. Stone giants breaking the goalposts. That's McGonagall's handiwork. Professor Snape is showing formidable spell work, though sadly not dark magic. Perhaps we should hold our hopes for his next attempt." Voldemort noticed Percy trying to hold back a laugh. The boy was less stiff these days, even prone to the occasional jest. Hermione, meanwhile, paid no attention to Lee's commentary. She was far too busy fussing with a small hand mirror, fixing the carefully styled hair that the wind had so rudely tousled. "Try the Potter family's hair tonic. Sleekeasies, I think it's called. Just 2 drops and it'll tame it completely, Hermione," Voldemort remarked, glancing at the little witch. "I'll try it when I go to Diagon Alley this summer," Hermione whispered quickly. "All right, it's our turn now." Dumbledore's voice cut through the murmurs, and at once the crowd fell silent. Together, they moved toward the high platform that had been prepared in advance, the testing apparatus already set in place. "Let's hope it works on the first attempt. Quirinus, focus." Dumbledore tapped his forehead lightly, peering at Voldemort over the rim of his half-moon spectacles. "Focus," Voldemort echoed, then glanced at Percy and Hermione. "Focus," they responded in unison, opening their notebooks to record. Dumbledore stretched, sweeping his gaze across the ruined Quidditch pitch. He exhaled deeply, then spread his arms wide. From the distance came a roar of cheers. The crowd had been waiting eagerly for this demonstration. "If only it were a transfiguration spell," Professor McGonagall said breathlessly. I've never seen him unleash his full strength in that art. Magic resonates across all branches, said Professor Flitwick, standing atop a chair with a camera recording everything. Still, I can hardly believe a single man's spell can